Hi everyone, and welcome to our first virtual Tea Talk event in association with Good Magazine and Ti Ora Tea. I'm Carolyn Enting, editor of Good Magazine, and today's topic is alleviating anxiety. It's a big topic right now with COVID-19, conversations around climate change, money worries, job insecurity, as well as our usual everyday anxieties. So we brought together a fantastic panel of experts: Sue Thompson from Evolve Performance Group, Ben Warren from BePure, and Hackney from Enrich. So to introduce our speakers, Sue Thompson is Managing Director of Evolve Performance Group. She is a corporate communications specialist with extensive experience in facilitation, training, executive coaching, and business advisory services. Hi, Sue.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to have you here too. Ben is founder of BePure, one of New Zealand's most renowned clinical nutritionists and holistic health experts. He has a master's in holistic nutrition and is currently completing his PhD on the relationship between mental health and nutrition. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Enrich helps people enhance their lives in a holistic way through fitness, strength training, and breath work. His personal development journey has taken him around the world, including meeting shamans in South America and visiting ashrams in India. He has also developed a class called Broga to encourage more men to realise the connection between breath and body. Hi, Rich.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to have you here. So, Sue, I thought we'd start with you, focusing on today's topic of alleviating anxiety. Can you talk a bit about triggers and where anxiety comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody has different triggers, but you can categorize them into a few small groups, and certainly our security, so be that our physical or our financial security, can be a massive trigger for anxiety, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are experiencing that at the moment. Absolutely. People, we can have people around us, whether they be our family members or people we work with, or just our perception of what we need to be to actually be approved by people, or the old, the classic being afraid of what people are thinking or what they are thinking, that we think they are thinking of us. And then of course there's situations. So we've all got a myriad of situations that occur in our lives, and they pop up all the time, and depending on what our programming is, we can have really quite anxious responses to those particular situations. And it's the trigger that first creates this reaction of anxiety, and then that's what we do with it after that is critical to really the experience that we have. So yeah, people, security, situations, absolutely, they're the major triggers.
So
and
how
it starts here.
Right. Sorry, I was jumping in.
Yeah.
So how does anxiety impact us?
Well, the thought around whatever the circumstance is creates this immediate sort of response, and I call it the octopus response. It's like, when an octopus is in a situation of danger, they ink up. And we know this experience within our physicality, that when something triggers our anxiety, we have this inking up moment where the whole body reacts. And with that ink is, it's designed as a protection mechanism for the octopus to get out of the way, but what it does is it clouds the area. And this is often what we find is our experience as well, is that our inking up in the situation and the creation of that anxious mind loop that can really get some massive momentum can actually cloud our ability to see through a situation or see a path forward. So the impact is immediate, and it's very much, it completely influences our experience of life. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I've had an experience, earlier this week where I had a bit of an anxious day, and it was really interesting, when you explained that, I just suddenly realized just how I felt at that time. You just become clouded, and everything else, you just can't concentrate on stuff because you're just clouded in that vision. So that's a really interesting analogy. I hadn't heard that before. So Rich, you have experienced a panic attack or an anxiety attack. Is that what you call it? Can you explain to us sort of a bit about that experience? And
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't know it was because I was so young. I was like 20 years old, and I was in a social environment, And I was just hit with, just like we were saying, then this big wave of, which I look at it now and it's just like, it was almost like a big awakening, if anything. And it was just like a big wave of fear. And this is back, there's no YouTube, there was nothing, and the doctors would just give you medication for this kind of stuff because they didn't even understand it themselves. So yeah, I was hit with this big wave of fear and awareness of the situation I was in. And yeah, that's what happened to me. And I was very scared because I actually thought it was kind of like a brain damage thing, or some physical damage I'd done to myself. And like I say, I was like kind of like the center of attention when I was younger, and like, so I was scared to even show any vulnerability. I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to show that I was weak in any way. So I carried this around me for quite a while and tried to understand it. And the way when I was younger I would try and get over it was like to have a few drinks. It would kind of calm it down. So I thought, that's the solution. That's the solution. That's the way you can get out of it. And yeah, until then I started professional sports and had a focus. So when I had this new focus, the anxiety would fall away, and these attacks wouldn't happen because I was now going into professional sports. I wouldn't drink anymore anyway. So all these habits were falling away, which would heighten an anxiety, an anxious feeling. And yeah, then that's a very long story short. But later on in life, I realized it's kind of what you're focused on will increase the anxious state. And having this like professional mindset and focus really helped, and to the point where it just fell away completely. Until after my sports, I'd have a few drinks again, and then a wave of this feeling would come back. But then I knew what anxiety was because it was all over YouTube, and you got more understanding of it. I was like, wow, I actually had a social anxiety attack at the age of 18. And it was just, for me, being like holistic now and kind of in tune with my spirituality, it was just almost a message saying this situation is making you anxious because it doesn't serve you. And it's kind of time to move on. So yeah, there's a lot of ways of looking at anxiety, but I reckon just focus and just checking out your situation. Is it really serving you?
It sounds amazing, and also sounds like physical activity and changing what you consumed also helped. So Ben, from a nutritional perspective, can anxiety be associated through a deficiency of certain vitamins and minerals?
Yes, it certainly does look that way according to the research, and I brought a bunch of research with me to discuss. So yeah, very much from nutrients like zinc, a lot of well-known mechanisms for mood improvement from zinc, and from studies showing giving people zinc. Selenium deficiency, again, very much coupled with increased levels of depression and anxiety. And of course, in New Zealand, our soils are deficient in selenium. Magnesium, a very, very important mineral. Over 300 enzymes, use magnesium as a cofactor in our body. And again, low levels are very much coupled with anxiety. And then again, vitamin C, we all know vitamin C for our immunity, but also vitamin C is very, very beneficial for decreasing anxiety levels as well.
I did not know that. Wow, so it's great for protecting you against, common colds and keeping you healthy, but also for anxiety. That's really interesting.
Yeah, again, there's a lot in the body.
So what foods and supplements would you recommend, obviously in vitamin C, to help alleviate anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. So fresh fruits and vegetables are going to be your best sources of vitamin C. The faster you get it off the tree or out of the ground into your body, the better. Obviously, your citrus, kiwi fruit are particularly high in vitamin C. Actually, just a whole food diet. The research just around eating a whole food diet alone has very strong effect sizes and benefit for mood. And so I'd start with that. I'd start with, trying to eat as fresh and healthy, as wholesome as you possibly can. And then, for vitamin C, obviously fresh fruits and vegetables. For magnesium, looking at green leafy vegetables, trying to get in as many green leafy vegetables as possible. For selenium, Brazil nuts are going to be, your best source. Tough to know exactly how much, probably 3 to 6 Brazil nuts are going to be very good. And then with zinc, zinc's actually found in a lot of our foods, and there's a number of reasons why we're potentially low in zinc. But oysters are going to be number one, so it's kind of an excuse to eat oysters if you need an excuse. But then pumpkin seeds, beef, lamb, milk, maple syrup. A lot of these very common foods that we're consuming are also have also have it in, zinc in. And then I would also be recommending taking a high quality multivitamin. The researcher Julia Ruckledge, she's one of the world leaders on treating mental health conditions with micronutrients. She's based at the Mental Health Research Laboratory down in Canterbury University. They did a study post the earthquake in Christchurch when they were looking at stress and anxiety in adults because of obviously the increased stress of the earthquake, and they found that the high quality multivitamin was very, very beneficial for reducing those effects.
That's amazing. And also going back to one of the other ingredients you mentioned earlier, maple syrup. That totally surprised me.
Yeah, it's got to be the real maple syrup, but yeah, maple syrup's a very good source of zinc. So you obviously have to be careful of the sugars and the carbohydrate content, but I think in moderation, like a lot of things in life, there's certainly a place for it.
That's amazing. I've just started getting Kai Box, which is a vegan food delivery service, and it's been really wonderful, but it's amazing how many recipes have maple syrup in them, and I'm having to go and I haven't got any, so I'm going to have to get some.
Nice. Good excuse.
So what about things that we're avoiding? Like Rich has just sort of shared that he started avoiding alcohol and that sort of helped him feel better.
Yeah.
So what should we be avoiding? I mean, can things like coffee and alcohol induce anxiety?
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear Rich say that about alcohol, because that's exactly what the research is, a complex relationship between alcohol and anxiety. But the interesting thing about it is that when people usually drink alcohol when they have anxiety, it does decrease their anxiety while they're drinking, but then it increases the next day. And so it can actually lead to the self-perpetuating. Rich may want to add in here. Was that the case for you, Rich, that then you felt like you needed to drink to self-medicate?
Yeah, well, it just, because I was kind of luckily like quite conscious as a teenager, I could see the cycle. I was like, wow, I understand why people are now become alcoholics, because it's just a cycle of like feeling better and feeling worse, and it's a continuous role, and to the point where the alcohol makes you feel normal.
Absolutely.
So that's how people can drink, because they feel more normal with the alcohol, because they're suppressing the actual problem and they're just covering it up with this alcohol. But I believe a lot of it's through unawareness. They just, from people like yourself who've got all this information to share with people, and they don't know, so they just keep covering it up and covering it up. Yeah, that's why this is really great. You're providing this service here. It's awesome. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's it. And that's what the research says. And so, and I think that's a brilliant explanation from somebody who can feel that. And so with caffeine, interesting thing about caffeine as well, caffeine with anxiety. In this study, they took people who had various forms of anxiety, from panic disorder through to generalized anxiety through to social anxiety. And they looked, it was kind of a mean study, really. They then looked to see if they could induce a panic attack by giving them caffeine. And so it was a decent amount of caffeine. It was sort of like three cups of coffee. So, don't expect people to go out there and have 3 cups of coffee. And but what they found is that just from giving this caffeine to these people who are prone to anxiety, they were able to induce a panic attack in over 60% of the people who had panic disorder just from having caffeine. Ooh. And even a generalized anxiety group. So these are people who are not generally prone to panic attacks. It's more generalized anxiety. They were able to induce a panic attack in 16% of those people just from giving them coffee. Now, obviously most of us, we would like to think don't go out there and have 3 coffees, but that's the effect at a higher dose. And for me, it very much ties in together with the autonomic nervous system and the stress response that caffeine's kind of inducing in our bodies. So, my advice is, if people have anxiety, is be mindful of your caffeine consumption.
Oh, another good reason to drink a good cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll cheers on that.
Yeah. Cheers.
So going back to you, how can we grow through anxiety? Are there any practical tools we can use for dealing with discomfort and to process it? Because as Rich has shared, a lot of us use alcohol to kind of try and deal with it. So are there any tools you can share with us?
Yeah, it's interesting. We sort of move towards this normal state of being, or a normal approach, which is dumbing it down with some sort of substance like alcohol or caffeine. But there's an opportunity to move from normal to natural, but we don't really know what that natural actually is until we go there. So it's quite fascinating to see when we have this discomfort and any sense of whether it be anxiety or there being a problem, there's this really natural attitude of kind of running away from it. It's like, how fast can we kind of get away from this? And what we're actually missing is this glad wrap moment. You've all heard of sort of sliding door moments. There's this glad wrap moment that if we actually look into and explore or investigate with some direct inquiry, we can poke through that glad wrap pretty quickly. And what that takes is being able to, the moment you feel like the octopus inking up, this sense of anxiety occurring, being able to pause for a moment and go, okay, am I in danger right now? Is there something, do I have a fight or flight response going on here because there's a Mack truck coming for me, or I'm actually in danger? And if that's the case, then yes, you need to remove yourself from that danger as quickly as possible. But if you're not, and this is where it gets fascinating, because our mind will take us into past situations or future situations, and we'll be thinking about the past or future and creating a whole lot of anxiety based on a memory or an imagination, and we're actually out of our now moment. So it's bringing our attention back to the now moment by going, one, are we in danger? If not, then let's have a look at the trigger here. What is stimulating this sense of anxiety? And by separating yourself from it for a moment to look at it, like putting it on the whiteboard of the mind, really, and going, how detrimental is this to me right now, and what would I prefer? So if there's a particular situation that's occurring, or that I'm imagining, or I'm remembering, that's making me anxious, then I have the opportunity to think about what would I prefer in this circumstance or situation. And it might be, if we're talking about the triggers of people, it might be that I actually need to have a particular conversation, or I need to remove myself from a situation, completely depending on the circumstances. But identifying what the trigger is and the mind loop. And when we identify a mind loop and are able to establish what outcome we would actually like, we can start to put our attention towards that outcome versus being focused on what we're fearing. So it's this flip-flop between fear and desire. So we get anxious about both, anxious about what we're afraid of and what we're desiring, whether it's going to happen or not. And that keeps us from the now experience. So investigate it. Have a poke at that glad wrap and see, in this moment, is there something that I can learn from this? What would I prefer in this situation? And here's the kicker. What is the first step that I can take towards the outcome that I'm wanting? And then how will I put myself on that path again when my mind deviates back to a place of fear and anxiety? And one of the greatest circuit breakers here is your breath. Being able to take a breath, and I think we're going to explore that. So being able to really take a break as a circuit breaker, to kind of go, take a breath, I should say, as a circuit breaker, to step back and look at the whiteboard of the mind and assess the situation versus being the situation.
Amazing. Well, Rich, you work with breath, and I was going to ask you sort of what three practices you recommend for alleviating anxiety.
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Sue. Very well put. Yeah, that's awesome. So just quickly, so I'm just going to reverse a little bit. So through my professional experience, I then went to India and did a long while there, and I did 21 days in silence. And then after I mastered my mind, because I like to do things like full noise, so there's professional sports, then I was like mastered my mind to the point of like just beautiful quietness, where I didn't think I want to do anything else in my life but just sit in the field, or I was just so happy and content. And then I realized I needed to be of service, so I did a lot more research on breath work and became like, I teach my own breath work now. And I just got to share, I realized then that it's all been done back to front. Like if we could master the breath first, the first thing available to us, the easiest thing that we can tap into is our breath. And that is our medicine. And then the second thing, we can focus on our mind, which takes a little bit longer to master. And then we can work on our physical body. And all those three together gives you that nice holistic approach to relieving anxiety and yeah, so be holistic within your lifestyle as well. Yeah, so then that's why I will talk about the breath more, because it's your first easy accessible thing. And that's your rest and digest. So that's what we're aiming to, is rest, digest. Not just digest our food, but digest all of our input from everything in our surroundings, from our family, our work, and our business. So breath's going to allow us to sink in, digest all that, and at least then we can process it. So this is very simple. I just say 6. Like 6 is a number where they say just 6 deep breaths will allow you to get into your rest and digest mode, out of your sympathetic into your parasympathetic breathing, into your diaphragm. They say that if you're breathing for your sympathetic, and they've done some tests, it's almost like your body's always preparing for a car crash. So that feeling of being anxious and a car crash could happen, that's when, if you're always in your chest, that's how you always are. So you can imagine your body can't process illnesses, injuries. It can't process anything when it's always in that state. So what we're going to do, would you like to do 6 breaths?
Yeah, can you show us how it's done?
Yeah, so the 6 breaths, very simple. I teach this to my children as well. If they're angry, they're scared, they want to shout at us that their other siblings or attack them or kick them. So let's think about this. So we'll breathe. It allows your mind to have time. So it's just simply place my fingers under my diaphragm, so under my rib cage.
Mm-hmm.
This is the lowest part of your lungs. So this is the lowest part of your lungs. You imagine your lungs at the moment, they're just like balloons, and they're shriveled like this. And when we breathe in, the balloons are going to expand. And when they expand, they're going to push your fingers out. So we take a breath in through the nose. So we breathe in and push your fingers far out. So, and then we hold just for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then release for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And already, and again, breathe in for 6. Hold for 4. And breathe out for 8. And relax. And could you feel just the weight like almost falls from your shoulders then? And you become a lot more present. Even me looking at you, I become more present with our connection, and I become present with where I'm sitting. And so if you repeat that breath then 6 times, that's enough to bring you into the present moment, to focus on like one thought, and to bring yourself into that rest and digest mode. So that's the first thing I will definitely teach to anyone. Even if I've got a client who wants to come for me to personal train them on the physical or teach them meditation, I would say, let's start with your breath.
That's incredible. And then I just feel much calmer just doing that twice. And so when you do that exercise, you recommend doing that 6 times?
Just 6 times to start with, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the most basic thing that I'll teach that. And then I'll go into circular breathing, where it's no pause, and fire breath, all different situations, different breathing techniques.
That's fantastic. And so has anyone else got any other alleviating anxiety hot tips to share that you personally use?
I love the breathing. I think, like for me, working with clients and with what Rich has just taught people there, I think that is, I couldn't agree more that it's one of the simplest ways for people to tap into their autonomic nervous system and relax, because it's very difficult to relax. If you say to somebody, go ahead and relax, we can't do it unless we've trained in relaxation. And yet that's really useful that people can then just tap directly into the nervous system by that breathing. So I think that's brilliant. Thanks, Rich.
And another technique I'd add to that too is, particularly once you've been through the breathing process, is to actually listen. And this is a really uncommon approach, because when we listen, we often just go into hearing more of the mind. But if you listen to what's around you, so can you hear the bird? Can you hear a river? Can you hear a car tooting? Can you hear children? Like listening to what's actually in your environment. When you're listening, you can't be thinking. Your attention is outwards versus inwards. So it's another great little circuit breaker just to listen to your environment. Go out into the backyard and see what you can hear. there, or listen to the conversations that are going on in the house or the office, or do a listening activity that just stretches your consciousness into the now moment, and so that you can hear what's here versus what's going on in your mind.
That's amazing. And that reminds me of a recent forest bathing experience I had down in Dunedin. And we had this wonderful moment where we had to walk like a takahe for a while. And we had to take these really slow steps like the bird. And then we had to stop and close our eyes for about 5 minutes, and then turn and then open our eyes. And then we walked down into this little area, and we had to sit quietly and just lie down and close our eyes for 20 minutes and just listen to nature. And it was just incredible when you're just there and all you're listening to is what is around you, how calming that is. And you notice the hum of the insects' wings and the birds and the rustle of the leaves and the trees, and it just is very, very grounding.
Hey, Carolyn, I was going to add to that. I was just about to say thank you to Sue again for that. And my next thing, I won't do it now. I was going to share the 6 senses present moment meditation, which cause you just mentioned the hearing, and it's amazing if you can tap into your 6 senses. This will distract your mind from being busy on anything else. So my friends who are actually in isolation and they're stuck in 4 walls, so I made them a meditation in my garden, and so I just help them tap in. You can hear the bird. You can probably hear the birds here anyway. It's so beautiful. And I'll bring them into their awareness of their hearing, their touch, their taste, their smell, and their eyesight. And I bring them into my environment, out of their room with their eyes closed, so they can picture being outside where I am. They can hear it all. And after that, then they just come back to me and they just say, thank you so much. It relieved my anxiousness of being in this room. And my thoughts.
That's a very good point, because anxiety and lockdown, how is everyone coping with that?
If I can just add one example of this, recently I had my mother-in-law in hospital, and of course you're in that environment which is very sterile, and she has a propensity for anxiety. And really she's 86, has no concept truly of meditating, but I could talk her through. I just asked her where was the favourite place that she remembered, and then just asking her questions and asking her to describe this place. And she was actually attached to a heart rate monitor at the time, and I could see her heart rate slowing down as she was remembering this beautiful experience and where she was in nature and what it was like and how much she enjoyed it. So, there is so many wonderful ways of breaking that state of anxiety by connecting with your truth.
That's so true. And Ben, you've got your lovely farm. I can see a bit of the backdrop there. Your own beautiful garden. I find personally that when I'm feeling a little bit anxious or stressed, that if I get out into my garden and start pulling out some vegetables or pulling out some weeds, getting my hands on the soil, it makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, there's definitely nice research showing that the importance of getting out in nature, and it really points to what Sue and Rich are saying as well, that it doesn't necessarily have to be, I don't believe it's with your mind. It's about getting into the now, getting into your senses, because for me, anxiety is often a fear about what might happen in the future. And so, if we can get, it's like Sue was pointing to earlier, if we can get out of our mind being in the future and get into the now, often we are safe. And so, for me, all of these things, they all go together so beautifully, and it's just finding what the individual, so many ways into the system, whether that's through breath, whether that's through your mind, whether that's through your physiology. But it's about finding what works for you as an individual. And for me, I personally utilize all these things. Why not utilize everything to feel your best?
Absolutely. And gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. Yes.
Gratitude.
Yeah, all day. Yeah.
Well, that's a really lovely point to end on. And I want to just thank you all very much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been really enlightening, and I'm definitely going to be using that breathing exercise, Rich. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Grateful to be a part of it.
Cheers.
Cheers.